I'm about to show you something that might genuinely make you angry at how much you've been spending on skincare. This jar is from Drunk Elephant. It costs $60. This jar is from Dollar Tree. It costs $1.25. That's not a typo, that's a 97% price difference, and by the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly how similar these two products actually are on paper, ingredient by ingredient, and let you decide if that 97% is actually buying you anything real. Before anyone comes for me in the comments, let me be clear about what I'm doing and what I'm not doing here. I am not saying Dollar Tree owns the Drunk Elephant formula. I am not saying these are identical products made in the same factory. What I am doing is something much simpler and honestly more useful. I'm reading both ingredient labels out loud, comparing the actual active ingredients each one contains, and testing both on my own skin so you can see what your money is actually buying versus what you could be getting for a fraction of the price. Drunk Elephant built an entire brand identity around clean, simple ingredient lists, no fragrance, no essential oils, no known irritants, just what they call the actives, plus a clean base. That's honestly a big part of why people love this brand, and it's part of why I wanted to test it specifically instead of a random luxury brand, because Drunk Elephant makes bold claims about ingredient purity and effectiveness, which means their ingredient list is actually something we can hold them to and compare fairly. I also think it's worth mentioning that Drunk Elephant markets itself specifically as what they call clean compatible skincare, avoiding a list of ingredients they consider suspicious, things like silicones, essential oils, and certain chemical sunscreen filters. That positioning is part of the $60 to $80 price tag you're seeing on these products. You're not just paying for the active ingredients themselves, you're paying for a specific formulation philosophy and the sourcing and testing that goes into maintaining it. That's a legitimate value proposition for some people, and I want to acknowledge that up front rather than pretending brand philosophy has zero value, because for some of you watching, that clean formulation approach genuinely is worth paying for, regardless of what a dollar version can or can't match. So I bought 6 different Dollar Tree products that map onto 6 categories Drunk Elephant is famous for, and I'm going to go through all 6, read you both labels, and give you my honest take on each one. Let's start with the one everybody's going to be watching this video for. Drunk Elephant's Marula Oil. This is their signature product, the one that made them famous. A facial oil built around marula oil as the star ingredient, marketed as antioxidant-rich and deeply nourishing for dry or dehydrated skin. This bottle costs about $72. I found a facial oil at Dollar Tree, built around a blend of plant oils, and here's the thing that actually surprised me. Marula oil showed up on the ingredient list, not as the first ingredient like on the Drunk Elephant version, but present in a blend with a few other lightweight oils. That tells me the raw ingredient itself, marula oil, is not some rare, impossible-to-source substance. It's actually accessible enough that a dollar product can include it. Now, is the concentration the same? Almost certainly not. Drunk Elephant's version leads with marula oil as essentially the entire formula, while the Dollar Tree version blends it with other oils to stretch the cost down. So you're getting a lower concentration, but you are getting the actual ingredient, not just a synthetic stand-in pretending to be it. I applied both to the back of my hand, one on each side, let them sit for 15 minutes. Both absorbed at a similar rate, both left skin feeling soft rather than greasy, which honestly is the biggest compliment you can give a facial oil, because a lot of cheap oils just sit on top of your skin feeling heavy and shiny. Neither of these did that. I also did a quick smell test, because scent is a big part of the marula oil experience for a lot of people, and the Drunk Elephant version does have a more refined, subtle, nutty scent, while the Dollar Tree blend has a slightly more neutral, almost unscented quality, which some of you might actually prefer if you're sensitive to fragrance in your skincare. I wore the Dollar Tree facial oil under my moisturizer for about 5 days straight, just to see how it performed as part of a full routine rather than just a hand test, and it played nicely with everything else I was using. No pilling, no greasy residue by midday, which is honestly the practical test that matters more than a 15-minute hand comparison. My honest take here, the Dollar Tree version isn't a one-to-one replacement. The Marula oil concentration is clearly lower, but for someone who wants to try what facial oils feel like before committing $72 to one bottle, this is a completely reasonable starting point, and the performance gap felt smaller than the price gap by a wide margin. Next, let's talk about Drunk Elephant's C-Firma Vitamin C Serum, one of their most talked about products, built around 15% vitamin C, along with vitamin E and ferulic acid, the same antioxidant trio you'll hear dermatologists talk about constantly. This one runs around $80. The Dollar Tree Vitamin C Serum I found lists a vitamin C derivative and vitamin E, similar to what I've seen in other budget vitamin C products, but no ferulic acid on this one. That's a real meaningful gap, because that specific 3-ingredient combination is actually backed by research showing it stabilizes vitamin C and boosts its antioxidant effect beyond what vitamin C alone can do. I also want to point out something important. Drunk Elephant states an exact concentration, 15%, on their packaging. The Dollar Tree product doesn't disclose a percentage at all, which is honestly typical for budget skincare. They rarely publish exact concentrations, so we're working with less complete information on that side of the comparison, and that lack of transparency is itself worth factoring into your decision, not just the ingredients themselves. There's also the type of vitamin C to consider. Drunk Elephant uses pure L-ascorbic acid, which is the most potent and most researched form, but also the most unstable and the most likely to cause irritation for sensitive skin. A lot of budget vitamin C products, including this one, use a gentler derivative instead, which is typically less potent, but also less likely to irritate. So depending on your skin type, that might actually be a point in the Dollar Tree version's favor rather than against it, if you've ever reacted badly to strong vitamin C before. I wore the Dollar Tree vitamin C on one side of my face for 2 weeks, straight vitamin C from a different bottle on the other side, just to see if there was an obvious difference in brightening. Both sides looked a little brighter by day 14, roughly comparable to my eye. But I want to be honest that 2 weeks is genuinely too short a window to properly judge vitamin C. Most of the research on visible brightening results points to a 6 to 8 week timeline before you can draw real conclusions. I did not experience any irritation, redness, or sensitivity from either product during the test period, which is worth mentioning since vitamin C is one of the more common irritants in a skincare routine. My honest take, this is the category with the biggest legitimate gap between the two brands. Drunk Elephant's disclosed concentration and the ferulic acid inclusion are real, meaningful advantages if brightening is your main goal and you want maximum documented potency. The Dollar Tree version still gives you a working vitamin C derivative for pennies, but if vitamin C is the one product in your routine you don't want to compromise on, this is the one I'd actually tell you to consider spending more on. Moving to niacinamide. Drunk Elephant makes a niacinamide serum built around a laboratory-modified form of the ingredient, $40, marketed for poor appearance, oil control, and evening skin tone. Niacinamide itself is genuinely one of the most well-researched, most reliable skincare ingredients that exists, tolerated by nearly every skin type, backed by decades of published studies. The Dollar Tree niacinamide serum I picked up lists niacinamide as the second ingredient after water, which, remember, ingredients are listed in order of concentration, so seeing it that high up is actually a strong signal you're getting a meaningful dose, not just a token amount for marketing purposes. A lot of brands, expensive and cheap alike, will list niacinamide near the bottom of a long ingredient list just so they can put the word on the front label, which is technically true but practically meaningless if the actual concentration is too low to do anything. I applied both under makeup, alternating days, across one full week, tracking my pores and any redness each morning. Genuinely, I couldn't tell a meaningful difference between the two. My pores looked slightly more refined by day 5 on both sides. My redness around my nose calmed down on both sides roughly equally. Niacinamide is niacinamide. It doesn't behave differently just because it's sitting in a more expensive bottle, assuming the concentration is in a similar, effective range. I also checked how each one layered under sunscreen and makeup, since niacinamide serums can sometimes pill or ball up under other products, and neither one gave me any issues there either. My honest take, this is probably the single closest match on this entire list. Niacinamide is a commodity ingredient at this point, meaning it's manufactured at scale and readily available. So the actual cost difference to a brand between using a little and using a lot is genuinely small. Paying $40 here is mostly paying for the brand name and the packaging, not a meaningfully different ingredient experience. Let's talk about ceramides, since Drunk Elephant's Lala Retro Moisturizer is built heavily around a ceramide, fatty acid, and cholesterol combination designed to repair and strengthen your skin's barrier. That product runs about $60. I found a Dollar Tree moisturizer that lists ceramides, along with a couple of supporting fatty acids, though not the full 3-ingredient barrier system Drunk Elephant advertises. It's a simpler version of the same underlying concept. Ceramides are still the headline ingredient, just without quite as complete a supporting cast around them. Drunk Elephant also emphasizes something called their signature molecule complex in their marketing, a biofermented ingredient blend meant to boost hydration, and that specific complex isn't something I could find any equivalent for on the Dollar Tree label, so that is a genuine formulation difference worth being upfront about. I did a 14-day split test on this one specifically because barrier repair moisturizers are honestly the category I trust the most for meaningful, visible results over a short window, since dry, compromised skin barriers respond fairly quickly to consistent ceramide use. Dollar Tree moisturizer on one side of my face, a different Ceramide moisturizer on the other side, same cleanser, same sunscreen, only that one variable changed. By day 7, both sides looked calmer, less flaky around my nose, less tight after cleansing. By day 14, I genuinely could not pick a winner between the two sides in my daily photos. If anything, the Dollar Tree side looked slightly dewier by the end, though that might just be a difference in the occlusive finish of the formula rather than the actual barrier repair happening underneath the surface. I also tracked how my skin felt first thing in the morning, since a strong barrier moisturizer should leave you waking up without that tight, dehydrated feeling, and both sides delivered on that consistently by the second week. My honest take, this is a genuinely strong dupe. Ceramides do the same job in your skin, whether they're sitting in a $60 jar or a $1.25 jar, and my 2-week test backed that up with real, trackable results on both sides. The missing signature complex is a real gap on paper, but it didn't translate into a noticeable performance gap in my own testing. I also want to mention texture and application feel here, because that's genuinely something Drunk Elephant does well and charges for. Their moisturizer has a distinct, almost whipped texture that a lot of people find genuinely enjoyable to apply, part of what they call the sensorial experience of using the product. The Dollar Tree version has a more standard, straightforward cream texture, nothing unpleasant, but also nothing particularly memorable about how it feels going on. If part of your skincare routine is about enjoying the ritual of it, that's a real, legitimate difference worth factoring in beyond just the ingredient list. Now let's talk about the Protini Polypeptide Cream, Drunk Elephant's Protein Moisturizer, built around a blend of amino acids and peptides, marketed heavily for firming and plumping, $68 a jar. Peptides are a genuinely more complex category than ceramides or niacinamide because there are dozens of different peptide types, each targeting slightly different things, and formulation quality actually does vary more here than in some of the other categories we've covered. The Dollar Tree moisturizer I compared this to lists a peptide complex, unspecified which exact peptides, alongside some basic amino acids. This is the category where I have the least confidence in a true match because without knowing the specific peptide types and their concentrations, which neither brand fully discloses, it's genuinely hard to say how comparable the actual anti-aging performance would be over the long term. This isn't something 2 weeks of wear can meaningfully test. Drunk Elephant does list several named amino acids on their packaging, which at least gives you something concrete to research, whereas the Dollar Tree version keeps things vaguer with generic peptide complex language, and that lack of specificity does make me personally more cautious about this particular category. I wore both for 2 weeks anyway, one under each side of my jaw, where I sometimes notice mild skin laxity, and honestly, 2 weeks showed no visible difference either way, on either side, which tracks, because peptides generally need 8 or more weeks of consistent use before you'd expect to see any real firming results. I did notice both sides felt equally hydrated and comfortable throughout the test, so at minimum, neither product let me down as a basic moisturizer, even if I can't speak to the long-term firming claims either brand makes. My honest take? I can't give this one a confident verdict either way based on my own testing, and I want to be upfront about that instead of pretending otherwise. If firming and peptide technology specifically is your priority and you have the budget for it, Drunk Elephant's more transparent, more researched peptide blend is probably the safer bet. If you're just looking for a solid daily moisturizer with peptides as a nice-to-have, not a hard requirement, the Dollar Tree version is a reasonable, low-risk try. Before I get to the last one, I want to take a step back and talk about why so many of these Dollar Tree formulas end up looking similar to expensive brands on paper in the first place, because I think understanding that actually helps you shop smarter beyond just this one video. A lot of skincare ingredients, especially the well-known actives like niacinamide, hyaluronic acid, and even Marula Oil, are manufactured by a relatively small number of large ingredient suppliers who sell to hundreds of different skincare brands at every price point. Drunk Elephant doesn't necessarily manufacture their own raw niacinamide from scratch in a private lab, and neither does a budget brand. They're both very likely buying from the same handful of global suppliers, then formulating their own final product around it. What actually differs between brands is the concentration they use, how the ingredient is stabilized and delivered, the supporting cast of other ingredients around it, and of course the packaging, marketing, and brand experience wrapped around the whole thing. That's genuinely the honest, unglamorous explanation for why a $1 product and a $60 product can sometimes share meaningful ingredient overlap. Last one, let's talk sunscreen, because Drunk Elephant makes a mineral sunscreen, Umbra Tint, built around zinc oxide, tinted, broad-spectrum SPF 30, running around $34. I found a Dollar Tree sunscreen that's also broad-spectrum SPF 30, though it uses a chemical filter system rather than a mineral one, which is an actual formulation difference worth knowing about, not just a price difference. Mineral sunscreens sit on top of your skin and physically reflect UV rays. Chemical sunscreens absorb into your skin and convert UV radiation into heat that dissipates. Both are considered safe and effective by dermatologists when used correctly, but they behave differently on skin, and some people specifically prefer mineral formulas for sensitive skin reasons, or because mineral filters tend to start working immediately on application, while chemical filters typically need about 15 to 20 minutes to fully activate after you put them on. Protection-wise, SPF 30 Broad Spectrum is SPF 30 Broad Spectrum regardless of price. That's a regulated, tested standard, not a marketing claim. And both products I compared list that same rating clearly on the packaging. What you're paying extra for with the Drunk Elephant version is specifically the mineral formulation and the tint shade range, not superior sun protection in a general sense. I also swatched both on my forearm to compare finish. The Drunk Elephant tint blended into a slightly more universal shade range with a subtle glow finish, while the Dollar Tree version had a narrower tint range and a more matte finish, which for some skin tones might mean a slightly less seamless blend. My honest take, if you specifically need or prefer mineral sunscreen for sensitive skin, this isn't really a fair swap, since the Dollar Tree version uses a completely different filter technology, and that's a legitimate reason to spend more if mineral formulas are the only thing your skin tolerates well. But if you just need reliable, broad-spectrum daily protection and don't have a specific reason to require mineral formulas, the actual protection level here should perform equivalently, and that's really the most important number on either label. So here's where I land, after going through all 6 of these side by side. The closest matches, where I'd tell you to save your money without much hesitation, are the Niacinamide Serum and the Ceramide Moisturizer. Both showed genuinely comparable performance in my testing, and both rely on commodity ingredients where concentration and quality control matter more than brand name. The Marula Facial Oil is a reasonable budget entry point if you want to try the category. Just know you're getting a diluted version of what made that product famous in the first place. Still worth trying if $72 feels like too big a leap of faith for an ingredient you've never tried before. Vitamin C is where I'd actually tell you to consider spending more, specifically because of that ferulic acid gap and the disclosed concentration difference, if brightening results are genuinely your top priority and you're not particularly sensitive to stronger formulations. The Peptide Moisturizer is the one I genuinely can't give you a confident verdict on. The category is just too dependent on specifics neither brand fully discloses for me to make a real call based on 2 weeks of wear testing, and I'd rather tell you that honestly than pretend I have a definitive answer I don't actually have. And the sunscreen comes down to a genuine formulation choice rather than a simple upgrade or downgrade. Mineral versus chemical is a preference question as much as a performance question for most people. 97% cheaper doesn't mean 97% worse, and it definitely doesn't mean identical either. The honest answer sits somewhere in between depending on which specific ingredient and which specific product category you're talking about. And I think that nuance actually matters more than a simple yes or no answer that either brand's marketing would prefer you land on. I also want to say something about how I'd actually use this information if I were you, watching this trying to decide what to do with your own routine. I wouldn't necessarily tell you to throw out every Drunk Elephant product you own and replace it overnight. That's not really the point of this video. What I would tell you is that if you're building a routine from scratch, or if you're curious about a specific ingredient category before committing real money to it, starting with the Dollar Tree version to see how your skin responds is a genuinely low-risk way to test the waters. If your skin loves it, you've saved yourself a significant amount of money long-term. If you find you want more, a higher concentration, a more refined texture, a fuller ingredient profile, then you know exactly what you're upgrading for when you do eventually spend more. Instead of just assuming more expensive automatically means better without ever actually testing that assumption for yourself. If you want me to test more specific brand comparisons like this, drop the brand name in the comments and I'll add it to my list. And if you've tried any of these Dollar Tree dupes yourself, I want to hear whether your experience matched mine. especially on the Peptide Moisturizer, since that's the one I'm still genuinely curious about long term. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.